today we have Kory Hunter. Kory Hunter served as a transformational coach for Thoughtful Teacher. I'd like to welcome Kory to our interview this morning. The goal of the interview is simply just to get some feedback from some of the coaches who work with teachers, because the coaches truly were where the rubber meets the road, and the coaches worked intimately with the teachers who drove progress. So before we get started, Kory, can you just provide me an overview, man, of your professional background? You were so instrumental in the growth of Thoughtful Teacher as we work with lots of teachers throughout New Jersey, the New York area. So, man, what's your background?
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Dr. Stephenson. It's truly a privilege and an honor to come on and have an opportunity to serve teachers again through this interview. So as you know, when we first met, when you first reached out to me, the first question you had for me was, I see that you're a coach. Have you coached teachers? And I said, well, no, not really, because most of what I was coaching on was executives in the business world. And coaching them for leadership development, leadership training. And so when you said, well, teachers are people and you coach other people, so it's kind of the same. Why don't we jump on and talk about Thoughtful Teacher model? And if it's a good fit, we'll talk about the next steps. So my professional background is I spent the first 15 years in my professional career working in financial services as a wealth management advisor. And one day I decided I wanted to transition over into teaching. That was an 80% pay cut for me, but I wanted to have an opportunity to make a more significant impact. And so I did that. And I've been teaching now on a university level for the past 7 years. So I did have some classroom experience when you and I first connected. And so and that's kind of my professional experience.
Yeah, man, you had a very interesting background. I do remember with the wealth management piece and the executive coaching. And I mean, at the end of the day, man, growing people is like growing people, right? And as a coach, you're able to look into, I'm going to say their soul, right? But just you're able to look into their brain, provide them with solutions to areas in which they may be stuck, right? You have this ability to kind of, it's a non-judgmental look. So you're not caught up in their biases. You're not necessarily caught up in their egos. It's just a neutral look to determine what needs to be fixed, what needs to be tinkered with, and to promote growth. So regardless of almost any background in which you were before, which was, wealth management and executive coaching, you were able to translate those skills into supporting teachers, and literally you've done an outstanding job as a coach for us. As a matter of fact, I didn't do the numbers, but I believe you coach probably 50% of all of our teachers over a period of 2 to 3 years. Before the pandemic hit and kind of shut things down, you were in a role. You probably would have coached all of them at some point. So you did an outstanding job, and I do appreciate that. What interested you the most about becoming a Thoughtful Teacher coach? As you said, your background was in like wealth management and executive coaching, but now you see this kind of ad that says, "Look, come support teachers." Is there anything that kind of excited you about the opportunity to pardon me? Is there anything that excited you about coaching teachers as opposed to kind of the professions in which you were coaching folks before?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the time when I come in as an executive coach, usually someone else is hiring me to come in and do the coaching, right? I don't have an opportunity to meet with the executive first to make sure that we have a good fit. Usually the HR brings me in and they say, "Hey, we want you to provide this kind of coaching to the executives or to middle managers." Now, the thing that excited me the most was the fact that I myself was an educator. I had transitioned out of the business world, but still wanted to keep my foot kind of in that arena. So I thought that I could keep my foot in the arena of business through the coaching. But one of the things that I know is that the highest calling of a leader is the development of their people. And what was most exciting to me about helping educators and teachers was I believed that I had the ability to transform individuals. And I wanted to make a difference with people that were making a difference at a time that makes a difference. And I believe in my heart of hearts that there's no one that fits that category better on the planet than teachers. And so I welcomed the opportunity to have the opportunity to come into the classrooms of teachers and to begin to do the very difficult work with those teachers of not only transforming themselves, but transforming their classrooms, right? Because at the end of the day, a transformed life transforms other lives.
Yep.
And I know how important it could be for our students to have their lives transformed. But usually that can't happen unless the person who is trying to do the transforming has had their own lives transformed. So I welcome that opportunity. And as you know, whenever you said, hey, I've got 20 teachers in this school, how many can you take? And I said, I'll take 15.
Yeah.
And you're like, you sure you have the capacity for that? And I said, yeah, I'll free some stuff up. Just give me the 15. Bring in one coach to do 5, right? Because I was so excited in working with them. And it was a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. It was a lot of work for me, and it was a heavy burden on my shoulder, but I was really, really, truly determined to make an impact in classrooms whenever I had the opportunity to do so.
Yep. So let's try to put some numbers, man, to this this making a difference, this notion of making a difference, right? A lot of people don't do this, right? But when you're a coach, and let's say that you're working with an elementary teacher, you're coaching an elementary teacher in the art of classroom management. If that teacher becomes more effective, you have now impacted the lives of 20 to 25 students. In some schools, it's more, in some schools, it's less, right? So you've helped to transform the lives of students through their teacher. Let's put some numbers to middle school and high school, right? If you work with a teacher and you help this teacher become more effective, then you are impacting the lives of probably 125 to 150 to 150 students, right? Now, let's say that you're working with five teachers within a school. Now, I know that there's some overlap and so forth, but if we were to look at this in just raw numbers, you multiply that by 5. I mean, that's 150 times 5 is over 600 students' lives that you're helping to transform, right? So when folks say, we're just here just to kind of make a difference, I don't think that they apply numbers to that statement. When you apply numbers to that statement, you truly become a transformational figure within a school that's helping to transform lots of lives, hundreds of lives in every school, right? Just by working with a handful of teachers. So it's really powerful, the kind of the notion of coaching and the notion of transforming teachers' lives, and ultimately what that impact looks like on students is incredible. Okay, and I think people overlook that fact. So yes, you are absolutely right. I would come to you and I'd say, look, we had a big contract in Trenton, New Jersey. I think there were 18 teachers, and you were like, yo, I'll take 15 of them. I was like, look, that's incredible, because I knew from your previous work, right? I knew from your previous work that literally would have transformed the entire school. Now, the pandemic set in before we got our teeth all the way into that contract, but they've reached back out to us and so forth, just because the work early on was so powerful. So we'll have other opportunities, but truly transformational work in schools by working side by side with teachers, providing them with real-time, non-evaluative feedback to just kind of drive their performance. And to be honest with you, Kory, when we look at the data says that 93% of the teachers with whom we work and with whom we coach, you coach most of them, report that thoughtful teacher and the coach have made them more effective classroom managers and more effective teachers. So, I mean, those are big numbers. That's something to be applauded. And I'm not quite sure what other program yields those types of results and that type of data. So, man, I'm going to thank you over and over again throughout this discussion because, again, you did a lot of the work, you drove a lot of the work, and you had a true impact on teachers with whom you supported. So let's just kind of think back, right, to when you were working with teachers. And obviously, man, everybody has a first, right? So you've had a first time that you've worked with this teacher. You've had a first time that you worked in this school. I want you to think back, though, and were there any major discoveries or surprises that you encountered as you begin to work with, kind of dozens of teachers across schools?
So that's a great question. And I'm going to be completely transparent and completely honest with you, Dr. Stephenson. Before that time, I didn't have much experience having boots on the ground in K through 12 settings. So in my own classroom setting and at the university level, I've always kind of believed that my goal there was to be a change agent, was to be a transformative educator. And to be honest with you, I was kind of naive. Yeah. I thought that all the teachers were this way. I thought that, in terms of a growth mindset, right? One of the first lessons that I teach students is to have a growth mindset. And so I was pretty naive into thinking that, all of these teachers that we work with are going to have a growth mindset and they're going to be, looking to be able to benefit from the model and pick and choose a few of the strategies. But when I went in the first time, it was like, I don't want to say I hit a brick wall, but I hit resistance that I wasn't anticipating and was not expecting. It was like several folks were just entrenched and doing what they were doing. And as the saying goes, if you want to keep on getting what you're getting, keep on doing what you're doing. So it's like when I first reached out to you on the first debrief that we had, and we have debriefers after we go into the first school.
Yep.
I said, I started to mention to you, I said, hey, listen, you got to help me understand this a little bit better. What am I missing here? Right. And I said, and you had to help, you had to walk me through that expectation that I had that teachers are going to be, performing at a high level. Now, let's think about my expectation of teachers are that they're going to perform at a high level, because with my own students, my expectations of them are always high. So whenever I'm working with a teacher, I start off with high expectations. Now, and as you saw from the numbers, 93% of those teachers met those expectations. Yep. Now, had I went into the classroom thinking these people are set in their ways, they're not going to change, whatever I tell them is going to go in one ear and out the other, then those numbers would be a whole lot lower, right? Yep. So I think that what I was not expecting and the most challenging was getting over the fact that a lot of teachers are going to be working to prove the model wrong and not even trying to take into consideration some of the strategies that are all evidence-based that could help them become more effective classroom managers in their classroom.
So one of the interesting pieces about this work is the power of developing healthy relationships. And this is also one of the steps within the thoughtful teacher model, is developing healthy relationships. It serves as the foundation. So when we start working with coaches, and we had 10 working prior to the pandemic, across 4 states. But I always tell them, just look to develop the relationship, right? Once you develop the relationship, and I think that this is for anything, once you develop the relationship, that coaching relationship with the teachers, they are very willing to, open up and share their challenges and their strengths and their weaknesses. But unfortunately, I think that many schools, and look, I was a former principal for 10 years, oversaw a network of schools across the country. I work in schools all the time. But there's so many initiatives that teachers are handed that at some point they just think of thoughtful teacher initially as another initiative, right? And the walls go up and they're like, this too shall pass. However, once you develop the relationship with those teachers and they realize that you're there to help, they realize that you're there not to report back to their assistant principal or their principal, but literally to provide them with feedback to help them grow, they become much more open. And at that point, their success and their progress just shoots up, right? So the power of those relationships are critical. They're paramount to the work. And yes, teachers are not just, you can't just go in and say, you got to do this, this, and this. Like, it's not that easy of a group, and it shouldn't be, right? Because they're professionals, and they're proud of their work, right? So, but yeah, those relationships are critical. So again, man, we pointed out that you've worked with literally dozens of teachers through our program. What was the type of teacher that was more likely to be kind of successful in your eyes?
I think that teacher, the novice teacher, just coming out of their teacher prep program, they're being integrated into the school. They're 1 to 2 years into their teaching practice, and they are just looking for everything that could help them to be successful.
Yep.
I used to love whenever we got a list of teachers and I would see the ones that were, they've been teachers for a year, 2 years. Those are the ones that that from our standpoint that we've had the most success with. But I don't think that it's because of their experience as a teacher in terms of 1 to 2 years. I think it's because of their growth mindset. I remember I met a teacher who said, you can't tell me anything. I've been teaching for 17 years. And they were very kind of combative. And I said, well, fair enough. But, it sounds to me like you've been teaching for 1 year and you've done it 17 times because you're not really open to growing.
Good point.
And that first year, when we do everything, we're trying to grow.
Yeah.
So when he said I've been doing it for 17 years, I said, well, in all due respect, you've only been doing it for 1 year. You've done it 17 times because you've closed yourself off to growing.
Yeah.
And so
that first and second year teacher is the sweet spot. I actually think the second year teacher, because they know what the previous year was like for them, right? Mm-hmm. And they're reflecting on it, and they're like, "Look, some things have to change for the next year." And it doesn't mean. I want to be clear with this. It doesn't mean that their first year was a disaster, but what it probably means is that they had some goals that they established for themselves during year one that they didn't achieve, whatever those goals were, right? So they realized that thoughtful teacher can provide them with the framework, with the skills and the strategies to be able to achieve those goals in year two, right? For some teachers, year one was a disaster. But for most, it's not the case. They just did not reach their goals that they set forth for themselves. Now, there was also a teacher, and I'll just say the school district, I won't say the name, but there was a teacher from the Willingboro Township Public Schools that had been teaching for, I think, 13 years. And it was a gentleman. And the gentleman raved about your support, right? So I want to make sure that I point out that in 13 years, he says he's never received the type of coaching, the type of feedback, the type of technical knowledge about managing his classrooms that he never received that from anyone other than yourself over his, I think it was 13 or 14 years of teaching, right? So he raved about your support. He raved about, again, your patience, your ability to analyze what was going well within the classrooms, where the challenges were, but most importantly, serving as a thought partner after the lessons to be able to provide him with those pointers and those suggestions and those strategies to drive success. There was a lady who we worked with in Newark, New Jersey, and you were not part of this coaching program. There was somebody else who was. I got computer stuff going on. Let's see what's going on here. I think I got it. So there was a lady who had been teaching for, I remember specifically with her, she said 13 years. And she said for 13 years, she'd been bullying students. She'd been yelling at them. She'd be screaming at them. And she was like Debo off of Friday, right? Just bullying students. And she said thoughtful teacher had her re-envision how to manage student behaviors. And she said, I haven't yelled. So our coaching program typically lasts 3 months. And she says, I haven't yelled at a student in the last 3 months, since I started being coach, right? Because that's not what we preach. We preach for teachers to be positive and to provide and to create these healthy systems within their classrooms and to provide, positive feedback throughout the lessons. She never saw classroom management as such through all of her teacher training programs and through her first 12 years of instruction. Year 13, we come in, we provide her with the thoughtful teacher coaching model. We transform the way she manages her classrooms. She just reports a whole new level of job satisfaction that she had not achieved previously, right? So just wanted to kind of put that out there. Again, I agree with you, Kory. First, second, third year is a sweet spot when folks can still be molded, but we have huge success stories from folks who have been in the game for a long time also. So what was your most challenging teacher? And please, no names. Just I just want to go with what was great and what was maybe the most challenging.
To protect the identity of the innocent, no names. So I think, the teacher that I just mentioned, where I said, well, no, you actually been doing it for 1 year, but you did it 17 times, was a teacher. Now, generally speaking, I would never have that kind of a conversation or that kind of comeback with any teacher, right? But this teacher was literally he was an alpha male. Yep. And it was like we kind of started butting heads in the beginning, and I was like, that's not what we're here for. Yep. This isn't a confrontational, I'm not here to. His whole thing was, the 5 times that I was going to be in his class, it was opportunity for me to spy on him. And so that was the most difficult one, because I through all 5 coaching sessions, I could not get him to understand that we were there to support him, that we were there to coach him, that we were there to give him some pointers, because he'd been teaching for quite some time. And so the person who, from the time we start our initial coaching session, and there's 5 sessions, to the end, usually once we start building the relationship, kind of the barriers go down. But for this one particular teacher, those barriers stayed up for all 5 sessions. And I just want to say, Dr. Stephenson, is that when I provided you with feedback that we need to consider adjusting the model slightly, because I need an opportunity to go in without my agenda, without a coaching session scheduled, just to sit down and talk with them. And it was because of that teacher that prompted me to say, wait a second, we got to make some changes. And the fact that you were able to be flexible and found a way to be adaptive, I think it made the model much better.
Man, so I have 3 sons, right? And they play sports. Obviously, they take tests in school and so forth. And I always, obviously, you win games, you lose games, right? And I always say, you'll learn more from losing than you do from winning. You'll learn more from losing than you did for winning. Now, I'm not suggesting that you lost with this teacher, but what I am suggesting is that we learned lessons from that challenging teacher that resulted in our modifying our model to help you to go in and develop relationships with those teachers early on. Here goes relationships again, to have you go in and develop those relationships early on without providing them with any type of evaluation. So we implemented something called an icebreaker review, as you know, where our coach goes in and just gets an idea of the environment, right? Doesn't necessarily have to provide them feedback, can talk to them if time allows. But yeah, we learn more from those challenging opportunities, those challenging times, and those teachers than we do from when we go in and we're winning, right? So I remember that. Specifically. So man, as a thoughtful teacher coach, what was your biggest success story? And I know you have a few because I've talked to you about these time and time again. But if you could just share with me, man, your biggest success story, that would be helpful.
Jersey City. You remember the teacher? I won't say her name.
Yep.
You remember the teacher in Jersey City? So
I do.
She was kind of this specific teacher was kind of like in the middle, right? So we look for our sweet spots where the teacher is 2 to 3 years in, and then we've worked with teachers that have been teaching for 20 years.
Yep.
She was right at year 7 or 8. So she was right between the idea of, can I keep doing this or should I start looking for an exit strategy? And so to have an opportunity to work with her and to just simply let her know that, listen, everything you're doing, you're doing a great job at it. We just need to bring in a system. And once she understood that classroom management was nothing more than a system to manage the class, everything started to click. I mean, it started to click. So she was, for me, the most successful because, again, she wasn't that 2-year teacher who were just eating out of my hand, taking everything out. She wasn't the one who had a long tenure and really didn't want to listen to what I had to say. She was kind of in the middle, whereas like, this is a struggle. I want to get out. And then once she realized that we're only providing her with a system, it's not the system.
Yep.
It's a system. Once she was able to buy into that and to implement the strategies, that was, I believe, was my most successful coaching partnership.
Yeah, man. And I think I'd be remiss, man, if I didn't share that you were able to coach in environments, in charter school environments. You were able to provide coaching in district schools. You provided coaching to non-tenured teachers. You provided coaching to tenured teachers, and all of those things look a little bit different. But the thoughtful teacher model, we could integrate those in any environment, right? We work with students in kindergarten. We work with students in 12th grade, or teachers in 12th grade. It runs the gamut, right? Urban schools, suburban schools. We even had a rural school out in Pennsylvania, man, where they were growing soybean or something, man, right next to the school. It was like kind of crazy, right? But all of our coaches, man, can share these success stories. And you probably don't see it coming, which kind of makes it a bigger success, right? You start working with the teacher and 7 years in, and she probably early on is fighting you a little bit just to test your own will, but you're committed to it. You're committed to developing the relationship. You get to know her classrooms. You learn her strengths. You accentuate her strengths. You provide her support for some of the areas in which she's struggling. And before you know it, this teacher's growing, right? Because you're providing consistent feedback over a period of 2 to 3 months. They have a framework, they're implementing those things, you're providing them specific feedback on it and to help them grow. So as a coach, man, I'm fully aware of all of your success stories. This is just one of them, but you have countless success stories in which you can share, because every school in which you've been in, you've been successful with like probably 75 to 80% of the teachers, right? So if it's 5 teachers, you've helped 4 of them grow, and they admit to it. And even the one that you don't think grew, they probably are better positioned in the future to be a better teacher. You just didn't see it over that period of 3 months. I remember walking into a school in Jersey City. It's probably the same school. And we implemented this coaching model relatively late in the school year. I think we were rushing to like get it done, right? You were doing the coaching. I was on the videos with the online course. So I didn't necessarily know the teachers. You did. So I walk in and there's a teacher, and she says, Dr. Stephenson. And of course I'm like, huh? Like, who's this? But she was like, no, I'm taking your course. I'm, whatever, Julie Smith. Let's give her a fake name. There actually is a Julie Smith in my life. But there's a Julie Smith, and she says, it's only May. I probably have not made a whole lot of progress this year, but I'm in such a better situation or condition for September. Like, can you guys come back in September so you can see our growth? I didn't, obviously we weren't around back in September, but it's just to say, to some degree, man, we're planting seeds, right? And sometimes it takes time for those seeds to grow. So even if we don't see like the success immediately, it does not mean that we're still not impacting the professional lives of teachers and ultimately transforming the lives of students through our coaching work. Right?
Absolutely.
So, I'm going to say last question, but it's last formal question. As you said, you have a background in wealth management, executive coaching. Did you have a secret sauce that kind of led to your success as a coach?
Yes and yes. So one of the things that I would do is, although I know that we were there for the classroom management, helping them to implement a classroom management system, one of the things that I would do, and if you went back and talked to some of the teachers, they would attest to this, is that I would assess their leadership skills in the classroom. And Dr. Stephenson, I've got to be completely transparent here again. I'm biased.
Mm-hmm.
I have a leadership bias in that I see everything through the lenses of leadership. And I believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. So one of the things that I would do with teachers was just to help them, just to help them with their presence in the classroom, right? To help them with the presence in the classroom, with their body language, with how they were giving directives. And so infused within our thoughtful teacher model, I was sprinkling in some leadership development for the teachers, right? I think that I've been, fortunate to be able to learn a lot of the leadership development stuff, a lot of leadership development training and technique. And just like how the coaching worked for the executives, I believed in my heart of hearts that, hey, some of this leadership development stuff would work for the teachers too. So I used to give that to them during some of the trainings. For example, one teacher, she would, every time she would give instructions, she would be moving all over the room, just all over the place, just in this corner doing this, in that corner. And the students were just, and I said, hey, listen, I want you to pick a spot in the room that's an advantage point that can show and that can, where you can exude that you're leading, right? Yep. What's your position? Where are you going to be positioned in the classroom? So that when you want their attention, when you want to take control of the class, you want to stand there and you want to stand in a certain way. And obviously I started to show her the posture with putting the hands like this and the hand gestures and so forth and so on. That's not part of our model, right? But I thought that it would be helpful because once the students realize that the teacher's a weak leader, they're going to just, just challenge them every step of the way.
So what's interesting about that is, kids are really savvy. Students are really savvy. So it's funny that you said once they realize it, because there is this period of time when students are just watching, and they're like assessing kind of what you are and who you are as a teacher, right? And just kind of, if you apply the rules that you just kind of to set out for us in terms of, they're looking to determine what type of leader you are as a teacher. And if they realize that you are a leader who they can push over or that they can work, then that's exactly what they're going to do, because that's what students do, right? So there's this period, especially early on, where teachers are being assessed based on their ability to lead the classroom. And there are strategies, obviously, that we provide to kind of strengthen their ability to lead. But I call it management, but in your world, it's leadership, which makes complete sense. It's even a better way to frame it. All right. So look, man, I'd like to give you an opportunity just to kind of share what you're doing now. Obviously, you're still supporting Thoughtful Teacher and so forth, but I know that you've done some work through the John Maxwell program and so forth. So I'd like to give you an opportunity, man, if appropriate, for you just to kind of share what you're doing now.
So as I mentioned, you know that I'm obsessed with leadership and leadership development. And I try to focus on all things leadership. So now one of the things that I'm most excited about is having the opportunity in the upcoming weeks to go in to do leadership development training at the U.S. Air Force Commander Training. So they're bringing me in to do leadership development training with their leadership team there, both the new recruits coming into the officer training as well as senior leadership. And the one thing that I think is important is that the high command in the military sees the need for leadership development training.
Absolutely.
And they already lead on the highest level, right? And so you have the military commander training for the Air Force, who they're already leading on the highest level, but yet they're constantly looking to grow in their leadership ability. So leaders, we can't give what we don't have. And
Yep.
So if we're not constantly growing, then we can't give to the people that are following. And so that's what I'm most excited about, starting to having the opportunity to work with the military as well as other organizations around leadership development training.
Got it, man. So I'm going to just give you a little plug. If you're a leader of an organization and you need somebody to help support or develop leaders, develop, kind of the base or develop the performance of your employees, Kory Hunter is available. I'm certainly not just throwing you out there, but you can't go wrong with him. He's outstanding, and he does great work, and ultimately drives results, right? Again, 93% of teachers report that after working, with him, other coaches also, but again, he did the lion's share of coaching, that they became more effective under his leadership, under his coaching tutelage. So Kory, I won't hold you up forever, man. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of speak with me this morning. Again, we're gonna post this on a couple different on the websites and so forth. So again, man, I appreciate you taking the time, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stephenson, for having me. Looking forward to doing some work with you in the upcoming school year. Take care and be well.